Chapter 1. Born beneath twin shadows, the desert is not silent. It remembers the boy who was not supposed to live, beneath the gaze of twin suns, in a world where time decays like bone beneath heat. A child was born not of man, not of woman, but of will, not a god, not a savior, but something in between. Tatooine, the graveyard of dreams, whispered across the galaxy as a wound forgotten. Here, in the furnace of sandstorms and silence, breath was drawn into lungs that should never have formed. A child took shape in a womb untouched. A mother Shmi hollow-eyed, and kinda woke from a vision not her own, her body trembling with the echo of a presence that had entered her unbidden. She spoke no lies when she said, there was no father, there was only the Force, and something else behind it. A design long buried, a shadow long denied. The child's name was Anakin. He did not cry like the others. His first breath was not a gasp, but a command. The winds stilled. The moisture farmers fell silent. The air around his cradle thickened, as if the Force had paused to behold itself reflected. The boy's eyes were not merely blue, they were clear, as though the galaxy had placed its last secret behind them, waiting for it to awaken. In Mos Espa, where chains outnumbered prayers, he was raised beneath cruelty. Watto, a winged beast without mercy, bound the boy and his mother in servitude. Yet even in chains, Anakin ran faster than he should. He heard things the others could not. Machines obeyed him. The Pedraza he built was not an invention, it was a prophecy on wheels. Screaming through canyon death runs, the boy defied all odds, not because he was skilled, but because the galaxy wanted him to survive. All things bent around him. All events narrowed toward him. And above, the suns blazed with an ancient knowing. Some nights, Shmi would watch him sleep, whispering to the silence, "What are you?" But silence does not answer. It only listens. And from the void between stars, something was listening, far above. In the halls of Coruscant, the Jedi Council slept beneath the illusion of peace. They did not hear the cries of the Force. They did not feel the pulse, growing louder beneath the skin of the galaxy. But one did: Qui-Gon Jinn, Jedi Master, half exile, half prophet. His soul was stained with the scent of truths the Council refused to name. He found the boy not by intention, but by destiny's trickery. A broken ship, a lost queen, a sandstorm leading to the doorstep of fate. There, Anakin stood 10 years too young and 10 lifetimes too ancient. Qui-Gon's breath caught in his throat, not from the boy's words, but from the way the Force gathered around him like thunderclouds behind a smile. Blood was drawn. The count measured. The ancient whispers of life screamed within the child's cells. Not even Master Yoda bore such numbers. Not even the chosen one of old tales. But this boy, this slave, surpassed them all. Qui-Gon dared to believe. In dreams, Anakin saw worlds he had never touched. He saw forests burned black, oceans turned to glass, temples crumbling in firelight. In one dream, a tall figure in black reached toward him not with a hand, but with smoke hand said his name as if it were a sentence. He woke with sand in his mouth and fear in his veins, but he told no one. He left Tatooine not as a son, not as a Jedi, but as a key carved by forgotten hands. Shmi watched him disappear into the stars, her soul fracturing in silence. She knew she would never see him again, not truly. The Force had claimed her son, as Anakin's ship departed. A ripple moved through the galaxy. Somewhere on Coruscant, Darth Sidious smiled without lips. He did not know the boy, but he felt him, a shadow in the shape of light. The prophecy, yes, but fulfilled by whose design? The Jedi Council, cloaked in robes and caution, recoiled from the child. Too old, too afraid, too dangerous. They sensed what Qui-Gon would not admit. The Force in Anakin was not only strong, it was loud, too loud, as if someone had screamed into the fabric of time, and something deep beneath the temple stirred. There were catacombs older than the Order, statues whose eyes had been gouged out, books that no one read, but no one dared destroy. There, in the lowest dark, the Force trembled, not in harmony, but in warning. And so the boy stood, denied and accepted in the same breath. The Jedi allowed him in out of fear, not faith. They said he was the chosen one, but dared not name what he had been. Chosen for balance, yes, but balance requires destruction before peace. They called him hope, but he was already beginning to dream of fire. He did not understand yet. He laughed still. He built droids and played with saber crystals and asked where his mother was, but behind his eyes, the twin suns of Tatooine still burned, and they burned downward into a future no one could escape. Not Jedi, not Sith, not even the Force itself. And in the void beyond sleep, a whisper curls through 1,000 tombs. The boy was not born, he was summoned. Chapter 2, The Phantom. And the Storm Jedi do not believe in fate, but fate believes in Jedi. The galaxy, in its illusion of stillness, had already begun to crack. Republic banners fluttered in corrupted light, trade routes choked with hidden wars. Senators smiled with bloodied hands. The Jedi Order, robed in ritual and doctrine, sat blind atop the slow spiral of death. And within this crumbling peace, the Force uncoiled a storm, not born in lightning, but in whispers, in shadows. In Phantom Dot, the boy Anakin Skywalker, now bound to the temple, Obi-Wan Kenobi, barely past his own trials, had sworn to train him, not from eagerness, but from promise, a promise made upon a dying breath. Qui-Gon Jinn, the last Jedi to dream, had fallen, cut down by a red blade in the bowels of Naboo. Darth Maul, horned demon, silent rage, but he was not the threat. He was a signal. The Sith believed extinct had returned, and worse, they had never left. Anakin stood in the sacred halls, eyes wide. The temple was not comfort, it was cold. It smelled of incense and doubt. Jedi Masters watched him as one might observe a sleeping beast. Too strong, they whispered, too angry, too much like something we've seen before. He did not yet understand their fear, he only felt it. When he spoke, the walls did not echo, but the Force did. Palpatine, the Chancellor cloaked in gold, extended his hand. A father's smile, a serpent's tongue. He drew near the boy, not as ruler but as confidant. You are special, my boy. The galaxy will need someone like you. Anakin smiled. He did not see the fangs beneath the words, but the Force shivered. For Palpatine was no mere man. He was Sidious, the shadow in every council room, the rot beneath democracy's breath, the last Sith, and the first to wear a crown. In secret, he watched the Jedi, not with eyes, but with hatred preserved across centuries. His master, Darth Plagueis, was long gone murdered in sleep. Sidious had no need for temples. His altar was power, and in the boy he saw a new weapon, not a disciple, not yet, but a wedge one that would split the Jedi Order from within. Obi-Wan trained him with patience, but not with understanding. Be mindful of your thoughts, he would say. Yet the boy's mind was not silent. It was a galaxy of storms. Dreams of his mother, dreams of fire, dreams where the stars screamed. He asked the council for permission to see her. Denied. He asked to visit home. Denied. He asked why. Silence. The Jedi taught peace. But Anakin felt imprisoned, not by chains of metal, but by silence wrapped in robes. He began to speak less, to dream more. Elsewhere, in the dark corners of space, conflicts erupted, small at first, border skirmishes, political rifts. Unrest on Naboo had been only the beginning. The Trade Federation began to rise. Systems pulled away from the Republic, and always, behind them, SIDIOU. The Sith Lord fed war like a gardener feeds roots, because war breeds fear, and fear opens doors long closed. Then came the first true lightning strike, a Sith assassin. A duel, a master slain. Qui-Gon Jinn, who believed in balance, who whispered of prophecy when others dared not. His death cracked the sky. He died with Anakin's name upon his lips, and with that name, the storm began. The funeral pyre burned in silence. Obi-Wan knelt beside his master's fire, swearing an oath to train the boy. But behind that oath was a wound. The Jedi Council relented not because they trusted Anakin, but because they feared what he might become untrained. That fear would birth the future. Anakin felt Qui-Gon's loss like a severed limb. The first man to believe in him, gone. He did not cry, but the force within him screamed as time passed. Sidious grew nearer. He praised the boy's talents. He criticized the Jedi softly, like smoke slipping through stone. They do not understand you, he said, and Anakin believed him. In this chapter of shadows and whispers, the pieces moved. Not in haste, not yet, but in precision, like knives drawn in ritual. Maul was slain by Obi-Wan's blade, yet even in death, he served his master. For his death gave birth to something more terrible. The Jedi now knew the Sith had returned, but they did not know where. They looked outward, but the darkness was already within, and the boy still young, still dreaming, stood at the edge of it all. He did not see the war coming. He only felt the storm rising inside him, and from the mouth of a buried holocron, the voice rasps. The Jedi feared the storm, but they had already drowned. Chapter 3: The Temple that feared the sun in halls of peace. Doubt grows like mold. On stone, the Jedi temple rose like a mountain carved by certainty, each stone heavy with pride, every corridor echoing with the footsteps of the past. And yet, beneath its luminous spires, shadows multiplied. Anakin walked these halls with wide eyes and a restless heart. The other Padawans sensed it. They stood straighter when he passed. He did not speak like they did. He did not move like they did. The Force clung to him not gently, but possessively. It twisted around his presence, as if testing him, as if waiting. Obi-Wan taught him well, forms and discipline, meditation and control. But Anakin's mastery came too fast, too icily. He did not grow into power, he woke up with it. And that, in the temple's memory, was unnatural. Yoda watched in silence. His ears caught more than words. He listened to how the Force shifted. When Anakin entered a room, it did not hum with harmony, it trembled. The ancient master meditated alone in catacombs far below, where statues of forgotten Jedi crumbled under dust. There, even he could not hear the will of the Force clearly. It had become clouded, veiled behind something old and unseen. The temple. Archives held scrolls that no one read anymore. Jedi had once believed that emotion opened the door to darkness. Now, those texts were buried, but the dark side remembered. It lingered in the cracks, in the roots, in the breaths of old statues whose names were struck from record. Anakin was told to let go, to free himself of attachment. But his thoughts were not seeds to be scattered. They were chains. His mother's face returned in dreams, her voice crying for help. He awoke each time with clenched fists and burning skin. He confided in Obi-Wan. "I think something's wrong. I see her suffering." Obi-Wan answered with doctrine. "Dreams pass in time." Anakin nodded, but the fear did not pass. It fed something deep beneath the boy's ribs, where light could not reach. Palpatine's visits became more frequent. Quiet walks through Senate corridors, words layered with honey and ash. "The Jedi do not understand the galaxy as it is," he whispered. "They fear power. But fear is the path to stagnation." Anakin listened, not because he trusted the Chancellor, but because the Jedi had stopped listening to him. He began to wander the temple alone. Not just the halls, but the lower chambers, forbidden levels built upon ruins. There he found murals of things with many arms and no names. Jedi who held red blades. Statues of guardians turned monstrous. He asked the archives droid, "Who were these?" The machine replied, "Erased." But memory cannot truly be erased. It only sleeps. The boy's presence awakened something old. Visions began to crawl through the walls. Some Padawans reported hearing footsteps where none walked. The air grew cold near the meditation chambers. One knight went mad after standing too long before the ancient mirror below the central spire. The Force was shifting, and the temple, built to sanctify it now, feared what it housed. Mace Windu approached the council with new concerns. His connection is strong, but there is conflict. He is becoming unpredictable. Yoda answered only with silence. He had heard that word before, in another era. Long ago, the council voted to keep him close. Better watched than free. Anakin felt it, not protection, containment. So he trained harder, fought more duels, won them all. He mastered mechanics, languages, tactics. He was praised, but never embraced. He began to understand that the Jedi did not trust him, and once trust was broken, loyalty began to fracture. In the night, he returned to the dark corners beneath the temple, not to explore, but because something there called him. It did not speak aloud, but it spoke in hunger. One evening, in a trance, he laid his hand upon the cracked wall behind the vault of forbidden texts. The stone pulsed beneath his fingers, like a heart too long buried. For one breath, the Force fell silent, and he heard something else, not light, not dark, something before both. He fled before it could answer, but the wall did not forget his touch. The temple's windows reflected his shadow, and it was growing longer. The council gathered again. Yoda's voice was low. "Great darkness is coming, but from where? Clouded it is." None dared to say, "From within." And far away, Darth Sidious felt the tremor. He smiled beneath his mask of flesh. His trap had not yet sprung, but already the prey had begun to dig its own grave. The Jedi, high in their ivory sanctuary, sensed the coming war, but not the assassin who would one day walk among them wearing the face of the sun. And from the cold breath of a buried gatekeeper, the brightest flame casts no shadow until it dies. Chapter 4. The Blades of Geonosis. There is no war without a whisper first heard in the dark. The Republic trembled, but did not fall. Not yet. Anakin grew older, taller, stronger, sharper. The Council said he was gifted. Obi-Wan said he was reckless. Pom said he was kind, but the Force said nothing. It only watched Padma Amidala return to Coruscant, now a senator. Anakin saw her again after 10 years. His breath stilled. The silence between them bloomed. They should have remained strangers. They did not. Assassins came for her in the night. Slender machines, guided by poison and silence. Anakin stopped them, but something darker guided their hand. Dooku's name was whispered, once Jedi, now traitor. The galaxy began to shift. The Council sent Obi-Wan to investigate. Anakin went with Padme to Naboo. Protection, they said, but it became sanctuary. Love, forbidden by code, bloomed beneath waterfalls and politics. He kissed her with guilt on his tongue. She kissed back. They married in secret. Meanwhile, Obi-Wan followed clues into a storm. Kamina lost to the archives. A clone army, commissioned in the name of the Jedi, yet without their knowledge. Jango Fett, hired killer, held answers. But the real truth stood behind him. Darth Tyrannus. Count Dooku. Obi-Wan pursued him to Geonosis. Captured, imprisoned, tortured with truths. Dooku spoke of Sidious, of a Sith who ruled the Senate. Obi-Wan did not believe. He should have. Anakin dreamed of his mother again. Screams in the sand. He disobeyed orders and returned to Tatooine. Found her dying in Tusken captivity. She died in his arms. His rage ignited. The camp burned. Not just the men, the women, the children. All of them. The dark side tasted his tears and smiled. He returned to Padme changed. She saw it, but love, once opened, could not be closed. They remained together, bound by sorrow and silence. The Council learned of Obi-Wan's capture. Jedi were dispatched. Anakin and Padme followed. Geonosis awaited in the pit of the Colosseum. Obi-Wan, Anakin, and Padme faced beasts, not metaphors, real monsters. Their chains were broken by courage, but not before war arrived. Hundreds of Jedi descended. Lightsabers ignited like stars in a cave. Blades clashed with droids. Flesh fell. Screams echoed. The sand drank Jedi blood. Dooku escaped. Anakin and Obi-Wan chased him. Inside a darkened hangar, they fought the fallen Jedi. Dooku maimed them both. Anakin's arm severed. Obi-Wan broken. Yoda arrived. His saber flared. Old master against old student. Power against power. Dooku fled into shadow. The Clone Wars had begun. Palpatine received the news with grim satisfaction. "We'll watch your career with great interest," he had once said. Now that career marched beside a clone army under Jedi banners. War had come, and with it the slow death of the Jedi, and from the rusted lips of an ancient sentinel, "Peace does not end. It is taken." Chapter 5. The shadows between victory, even as heroes rise. They are hollowing within. The Clone Wars raged across 1,000 systems. Jedi became generals. Peacekeepers turned soldiers. The Republic fought for order. The Separatists fought for control. But behind both, the Sith played their silent game. Anakin returned to battle with a new arm, cold and mechanical. He smiled less, slept less. The war gave him purpose. The Republic gave him command. Soldiers obeyed him. He was no longer the boy they doubted. He was the weapon they needed. Yet inside, he burned. He led clones into firestorms and emerged without fear. His victories grew, his legend spread. But victory did not heal him. It widened the wound. Padme watched from the Senate. Their marriage remained hidden. Love survived in stolen hours and secret messages. She smiled in public. She wept in silence. Obi-Wan saw the changes. He said nothing. Anakin's dreams returned, but they no longer showed his mother. They showed Padme, dying in childbirth. Calling his name, he asked Yoda for guidance. "Let go of all you fear to lose," the Master said. Anakin heard the words, but they offered no comfort. He could not let go. Not again. Palpatine drew closer. Not as Chancellor, as confidant. "Father, friend, there are ways," he whispered, "to stop death." Anakin listened, not because he believed, but because he needed to believe. The Jedi grew distant. They questioned Palpatine's power, his prolonged term, his wartime authority. They began to suspect, but suspicion came too late. Dooku fell in battle, beheaded by Anakin's blade. Sidious had offered the kill. Anakin obeyed. Without hesitation, Obi-Wan sensed the shift. That was not justice, he said. Anakin did not answer. The Jedi sent Obi-Wan to Ut. Grievous was to be destroyed, the war's final move. But it was a distraction. Sidious revealed himself. Anakin stood between two orders, the Jedi who trained him, the Sith who promised him power. He informed Mace Windu, but not without doubt. Windu moved to arrest Sidious, took masters with him. Anakin stayed behind, waiting, trembling. The storm gathered, and from the cracked voice of the holocron before the fall, the door opens, but only for one. Chapter 6. The death of Skywalker to become Vader. One must first kill the child. Night fell on Coruscant. The war neared its end, but peace did not come. Inside the Jedi Temple, the Force churned, restless, anxious, afraid. Mace Windu confronted Darth Sidious in the Chancellor's Tower. Blade drawn, truth revealed. The dark side, unveiled. Sidious struck. Lightning tore through glass and air. The Jedi Masters fell. Only Windu remained. He held his saber against the Sith's throat. Anakin entered, torn, shaking, confused. If he lives, Padme dies. The thought whispered, Windu. Moved to strike. Anakin acted, a single cut. The Jedi Master fell into the abyss. Sidious rose, smiling. "You are fulfilling your destiny, Anakin." The Force broke. Anakin knelt. Sidious spoke the name, Darth Vader. The galaxy shuddered. Execute. Order 66. Across the stars, clones turned on Jedi. Trust shattered. Lightsabers extinguished. Temples burned. Friends became targets. The Jedi became prey. Vader marched into the temple, hooded, silent. Younglings ran to him. He raised his blade. Obi-Wan felt it from afar. Yoda collapsed in sorrow. The Force screamed, then fell silent. The Republic died. The Empire was born. Padme searched for her husband, found only silence. Vader returned, changed. Eyes yellowed, voice hollow. He spoke of new power, of saving her, of a new order. She wept. He did not. Obi-Wan confronted her, told her the truth. Together they followed him to Mustafar. Padme pleaded. Vader raged. "You turned her against me," Obi-Wan drew his saber. The duel began. Blade met blade. Fire met fury. The volcano roared. Words became wounds. Vader fell, burned, broken, screaming. Sidious arrived, collected the remains, rebuilt the body, metal, breath, silence. The mask descended. Anakin Skywalker died. Darth Vader rose. And from the ruins of 1,000 temples, the child is gone. Only the shadow remains. Chapter 7. The Birth of Vader. Where there is no pain, there is no power. He awoke in darkness. Metal limbs bound his form. The breath came not by will, but by machine. He reached for her name, Padman, but silence answered. She is dead, whispered Sidious, with quiet satisfaction. No, came the scream not from a man, but from a tomb the cradle of Darth Vader had formed, not in triumph, but in anguish. The galaxy had changed. It bent beneath a new master, Jedi. Ruin smoldered across countless systems. The voice of freedom had gone still. The Senate cheered, blind. The people bowed, unaware. The dark side no longer hid. It ruled. Vader's armor was forged in secret. Obsidian shell, cybernetic limbs, black breath. He was a monument to pain, a vessel of wrath. Sidious looked upon him with pride not love, never leavened, called him apprentice. You will hunt the Jedi who remain, the Master said. Extinguish their light. And so he did. One by one, he found them. In jungles, in deserts, in frozen wastes. No mercy, no voice left untouched by the scream of a red blade. Vader became myth. Children cried at the sound of his breath, but inside the armor, a ghost stirred. He saw her in dreams Padma, untouched by fire, weeping in the dark. Sometimes she called his name, not Vader. Anakin, he buried those visions. The Emperor whispered, fed him lies, then called them truths. They betrayed you. They feared your power. The Jedi would have let her die. Vader listened, but the pain did not fade. It deepened. He returned to Naboo, once, in secret. No guards, no glory, just shadow. He walked the halls where she once stood. He touched the stone where she now slept. A flower fell from his grip. He left no trace. Elsewhere, the Inquisitors rose. Sidious gave him tools, fallen Jedi turned hunters. Vader trained them through cruelty, through pain, through fear. And they served, yet none matched him. None dared to challenge him. Not one rival, not one equal. He was alone. Within the armor, Anakin's voice grew faint. The boy who once dreamed of freedom became a thing of commands and dread. The galaxy spoke of Vader, but no one remembered Skywalker, and in the Force, something began to stir, far from the center. On a desert world forgotten by maps, a child was born. His name was Luke. Thus it is written, when one flame dies, another rises. Unseen. Chapter 8. The Temple of Ash. What once stood in light now bleeds in shadow. Vader walked the ruins of the Jedi Temple. Ash covered the floor like snow. Statues once carved in reverence now lay shattered. The great archive burned, the holocrons. All that remained of the Order was silence. He stood before the council chamber, where once he sat as a knight. The empty seats mocked him. None remained to speak judgment. None remained to forgive. Only him, only Vader. He knelt in the center of the room and closed his eyes. The Force whispered. Ghosts stirred. Faint echoes of masters long dead flickered in the shadows. Wind howled through broken windows, but no stars looked in. The temple was blind now. Its light had gone out. Sidious arrived. He smiled as he stepped through the desecrated doors. Does it grieve you? The master asked. Vader did not speak. They were weak. Their teachings led to rot. We have built something greater from there. Ashes Vader rose, but in the silence he remembered children, younglings, their small voices, their confusion, the way they ran, the way they fell. His breath grew louder. The temple held no redemption, only memory. He walked its halls again, retracing death. Each room, each corridor was a wound, and in the Force the temple screamed. Outside, Coruscant moved on. Skyscrapers blinked with hollow light. The citizens walked beneath the temple, never. Looking up, they no longer asked what became of the Jedi. They had forgotten. That was the Emperor's true victory. FORGET FULNESS. But Vader remembered. He remembered the boy who once dreamed beneath those same stars. He remembered the promise he made to protect, to bring balance. That promise had rotted now. All he brought was fear in the temple's deepest vault. He stood before the statue of a forgotten Jedi. Its face was cracked, but the hands still held. A lightsaber in peace. He reached out. The stone crumbled at his touch. Vader turned away. The past had no place in the new galaxy above him. Storm clouds gathered. The Force trembled. Far away, Obi-Wan stirred in exile. Yoda whispered in swamps. Bail Organa moved in secret. Seeds had been planted, and in the desert the child grew. Thus it is spoken. Ash cannot hide the roots of light forever. Chapter 9. The shadow that watched over Tatooine. He fell, and from afar he watched the boy who would rise. The twin suns rose slowly over the dune sea in the quiet of dawn. A figure stood upon the cliffs, cloaked in silence, wrapped in exile. His name was forgotten by the winds, but the Force still remembered him. Obi-Wan Kenobi. He had taken the name of an old hermit Ben, but names meant little now. Below him, Dalar's homestead baked in heat. The boy played with tools, ran with joy, spoke with dreams. Luke Skywalker. Obi-Wan did not intervene. He only watched, always watching, like a sentinel carved from the dust. For years he had hidden there, burying the weight of war in solitude. But the past did not sleep. It echoed in every breath. At night he dreamed of fire, of screams, of the temple, of Anakin, his brother, his failure. The Force no longer answered him in full. It was fractured, wounded, as if mourning. But deep within, the silence, a voice sometimes stirred, older than all Jedi tongues. It whispered of balance, of waiting, of paths yet written. And in that whisper, he heard the child's name. Luke, the boy must be protected, not trained, not yet. Not while the dark still hunted. For far away, across the stars, Vader stirred. He had not forgotten the child. He had not yet learned the truth, but the Force trembled with the knowledge. Threads unseen had begun to pull. The prophecy was not dead, merely sleeping. Kenobi felt it, and in secret he began to prepare. He spoke to the ghost of Qui-Gon, faint and fading. He listened to the sand, to the storms, to the stillness. He learned how to become less than seen, how to vanish in the Force, how to wait without wasting. And Luke grew. He ran across dunes like his father had. He stared into the sky, dreaming of ships. He fixed machines with strange ease. He felt something, though he could not name it. Obi-Wan did not speak. But sometimes, the boy saw a shape in the distance, a watcher, a guardian cloaked in rags, Owen Lars warned him to stay away, but the child's destiny was not Owen's to command. The Force moved in spirals, never lines, and elsewhere Sidious searched. He felt something slipping beyond his sight. A tremor, a thread, the same mistake the Jedi once made. He sent inquisitors to hunt shadows. They found scraps, old blood, hidden temples now empty, but not the child. Not yet. OBI-1 waited, not in hope. In duty he would rise again, when the time came, not for himself, but for the boy, not for the Jedi, but for the balance long broken. The desert watched with him, and the stars whispered of coming fire. Thus it is spoken. One watched the dawn not to see the sun, but to protect the flame yet to rise. Chapter 10. The hidden sons of the Empire, they rose from shadow, shaped by fear, forged by lies, children of a shattered creed. While Obi-Wan watched over the last hope of the Jedi, the Empire bred silence. Across the stars, not silence of peace, but silence of control, of fear, of doctrine whispered in schools, of banners raised high while minds were pressed low. And from that silence they came, the Inquisitorius, once Jedi younglings or Padawans, left adrift in the purge. They were captured, broken, remade, stripped of their names, bound to Vader's will. Each wore the scar of what they had been and the armor of what they had become. They hunted what remained, not for justice, but for cleansing, not for peace, but for obedience. The Grand Inquisitor had once guarded the temple's great archives. Now he burned the knowledge he once vowed to protect. The fifth brother, silent and cruel. The seventh sister, swift as a blade. They searched the outer rim for whispers, for hidden masters, for children born with too much feeling. And they found them. They dragged the old from caves, tore secrets from scrolls, put fire to sanctuaries forgotten by the galaxy. But not all were captured. Some fled to the edges of the unknown. Some masked their gifts. Others became something else, half Jedi, half ghost. The Force stirred uneasily, for even as the dark spread its roots, the prophecy echoed unfinished. Vader led the Inquisitors with cold precision, but his mind remained elsewhere, haunted not only by the Jedi he killed, but by one he could not find, the phantom child. He did not yet know the boy's name, but he would. The Force saw the coming storm. It offered no clarity, only visions warped by pain. A twin sun, a shadow with a blue blade, a choice undone, and beneath the palace on Coruscant, Sidious, Meda, ET-AT-ED. He saw the future wrapped in thorns. He whispered to the Sith shrines buried deep. He commanded the galaxy, but still he feared what he could not see. The Chosen One's child, the bloodline of Skywalker, a secret left unbroken for now. And so, the Inquisitors were unleashed with new for no longer merely hunters of survivors, but seekers of something more. A ripple, a name, a light not yet kindled. Obi-Wan felt them drawing near. He tightened his vigilance, changed his patterns, buried deeper into shadow. He would not be found, not. Yet Luke must remain untouched. But destiny cannot be buried forever. The Force does not forget blood, and already the first threads had begun to pull toward convergence. Thus it is whispered, from within the Empire's iron womb, the broken sons of the Jedi now serve the will of shadow. But not all who are broken remain so. Chapter 11. A sun in the shadow of suns, 2 stars above, 1 truth below. A name forgotten, a destiny untouched, a child hidden from the eye of fate. On the sands of Tatooine, beneath the twin suns that knew no mercy, a boy ran. His name was Luke, not Skywalker, not yet, only Luke, child of farmers, a boy with questions carved into the bones of his soul, questions no one would answer. He raced wind and shadow across the dunes, chased mirages, hunted answers in the silence of the desert. And though he could not name it, the Force stirred in his blood like a sleeping star. Obi-Wan watched from afar. He called himself Ben now, wore robes of dust, spoke to no one, lived as a ghost in the wastes, but his eyes never strayed far from the boy. His vigil was sacred, his silence punishment. He remembered Anakin's smile, the fire in his voice, the way he once walked into danger not for glory, but for others. And he saw those echoes now in Luke, too bold, too kind, too strong. Owen Lars feared it, knew what Skywalker blood brought. He held Luke close, like a man holding back a storm with his bare hands. He forbade Ben from coming near. Ben obeyed, but he watched, and he waited elsewhere. In the cold chambers of Coruscant, Sidious searched for whispers in the Force, fragments of future, names not yet spoken. He saw flashes, a boy beneath two suns, a saber ignited, a sky filled with fire, and he knew the truth. The Skywalker line had not ended, it had only hidden, and hiding was not surviving. Vader did not yet see it. He was consumed by memory, by pain. He hunted Jedi without joy. He served Sidious without hope. He was no longer a man, only a wound in armor. And still, the Force stirred. Luke grew older, learned to fly, to fix what was broken, to dream of stars beyond the dust. He wanted more. The Force wanted more. And far away, the Rebel Alliance was beginning to breathe. Scattered cells, broken systems, sparks in the dark. They had no idea what lay ahead, that the war would turn on the will of one boy, that the Chosen One's legacy had not ended, but waited beneath a forgotten name. Obi-Wan felt it in the wind. Something would come soon. The boy could not stay hidden forever, and so the twin suns watched, one shadowed, one bright. Beneath them, the Force grew restless, waiting for the name that would rise again. Chapter 12. The flame reignites when the old fire stirs. In young hands, destiny cracks open like a wound. The Force calls not only to blood, but to belief. The day came when a message was found, buried in rust and static, stammering from the mouth of a droid named R2, a plea from the past. A voice long thought extinguished, Dotlia Organa, a princess, without a throne, a leader of shadows, a child of Anakin Skywalker, though she did not know. She called for Obi-Wan Kenobi. The name struck Ben like thunder in dry stone. For years, he had been no more than a whisper, a watcher, a shell. But now the world reached for him. The Force refused his silence. He could not ignore it. He found Luke. The boy had grown. Curious, brave, reckless. But beneath his skin, the Force pulsed, subtle and sacred. Kenobi saw it, the same rhythm, the same storm, the same soul Anakin once carried. He handed Luke his father's weapon, ALIGHTS-ABER, blue as memory, bright as sorrow. Luke's hands trembled. He did not yet understand what it meant to hold a blade shaped by destiny, to carry the fire of a fallen order, to inherit a war sealed in blood and prophecy. But he accepted it. He asked who his father was. Kenobi answered with fragments. carefully shaped lies, softened truths. He feared what the whole truth would do. The boy was not ready, and yet something awakened in him. The journey began with loss, a home burned, a family taken. Luke stood in ash and silence, watching smoke drift into the twin skies. He chose to follow Kenobi, to leave the dust behind, to seek purpose in stars. They joined with Han Solo, a scoundrel running from debt, with Chewbacca, a warrior of loyalty, and Leia fierce, luminous, burdened with the rebellion of 1,000 voices. Together they became something greater and still. The Shadow watched Vader had felt it in the cold chambers of his fortress. His breath caught not from the machine, but from something deeper, a presence, unseen, unknown, but familiar. He ordered pursuit. The Death Star moved. Planets trembled. The rebellion, once scattered, began to gather. Luke touched the Force, not with control, not yet, but with faith, with instinct. He fired the shot. The great weapon fell. The Death Star became a grave of arrogance. And in that fire, Sidious saw something ancient stir. Not just rebellion, not just hope, a prophecy reigniting. The son of Skywalker had entered the war. In the ashes of stars, an old fire lives again, and destiny begins to quicken its pace. Chapter 13. The cave beneath the dream, within the stillness of Dagobah, beneath roots and rot. The Force reveals what flesh fears to face. The galaxy turned, but Luke was sent away by command of the old ghost, Kenobi, and the last of the Jedi. Yoda hidden deep in the swamps of Dagobah, cloaked from the eyes of Sith and stars alike. Yoda watched him come, not with hope, not with joy, with weariness. The boy was like his father, too much like him, bold, impatient, burning with the need to act, to save, to matter. Yoda saw it in his eyes, the same hunger that had unmade the chosen one. Training began, but it was not like the training halls of Coruscant, nor the regiments of war. It was silence, balance, breathing, listening to the Force, not commanding it, feeling the galaxy, not shaping it. Luke struggled, and the swamp listened. There was a cave, not carved by tools, but by memory, by darkness, a place strong in the dark side, thick with rot and echo. It called to Luke, not in words, but in a dream. He entered, no blade drawn, no protection but his doubt. Inside he met Vader, but not the Vader that hunted the stars. A vision, he struck it down, the helmet split, inside his own face. He stumbled from the cave, shaken. The Force had shown him what might be, what lies beneath his courage, what waits if the fire within is left untimid. Yoda said nothing. The lesson was not his to explain. Meanwhile, across the stars, Vader brooded. He had felt the moment Luke entered the vision. The Force whispered the tremor, a ripple through shadow. Something lost long ago was waking. He did not yet know the truth, but he would, for Sidious had sensed it too. The Emperor began to plan, not merely to destroy the boy, but to bend him, to offer him the throne his father never held, a legacy of shadow, reborn through the sun, on Bespin. The trap was set. Luke left before his training was complete. He ran to save his friends, to face Vader, to change fate. But fate does not bend for those who are unready, and the cave is never left behind. It follows like a shadow that waits within the soul. Chapter 14. The Father of Shadows in the clouds above Bespin. The sky wept as truth was unsealed. He came as a son, He left as something else. Luke Skywalker, trained in silence, arrived at Cloud City with hope blazing and blade ready. But hope is a fragile shield. Vader was waiting. The trap had been set long before Luke boarded his ship. Sidious had seen the path. The boy would come. He would face his father, and in that crucible, he would either break or be reforged. Their duel echoed through steel halls and carbonite chambers. But it was no mere battle. It was a prophecy unfolding, an ancient tragedy returning in flesh and flame. Luke fought well, but he was not ready. Vader's strikes were heavy with knowledge, with years of pain, betrayal, fire. Luke's blade flickered against the weight of a fallen galaxy. The battle pushed him down, down, into the very veins of Cloud City. There, on the gantry, wounded and gasping, the moment came. Vader reached out not to strike, but to reveal, "I am your father." The words were not a weapon, they were a wound. Deeper than saber, darker than the cave, Luke screamed, not just in disbelief, but because some part of him had always known. The truth had always been there, in the edges of his dreams. In the shape of his fear, he chose to fall rather than join him, down into the void, down into the storm, into the arms of fate itself. Leia felt it, so did Vader, a connection deeper than sight or sound, a thread binding them across time. The chosen one had passed on his blood, but it was not just blood, it was destiny. Sidious watched from the shadows. He saw the truth now. Not one Skywalker, two, the boy would be tested, but the girl she would remain hidden, for now, until the final pieces moved. Above all, Vader felt a change. The sun had not broken. He had seen the truth and rejected it. Vader returned to the Emperor, empty-handed, but not unchanged. Within the armor, something shifted, not regret, but memory. Names stirred like dust in a tomb, and still the galaxy turned. The Father had revealed the shadow. The Son had chosen the fall, but the fall was not the end. Chapter 15. The Throne of Ash upon the Black Tower of the Empire. A throne awaited a soul hollowed by fire. The galaxy bowed, not to peace, not to hope, but to order carved from fear. Palpatine sat upon his throne like a god of silence, his eyes deeper than space, his smile forged in extinction. Around him, the galaxy crumbled and complied, and beneath that throne, Vader knelt. He had returned from Bespin without the boy, but he had returned with something far more dangerous, doubt. The Emperor felt it, in the silence between words, in the pause before obedience, in the way the apprentice stared too long into the void of hyperspace. He saw the ghost of Anakin Skywalker flickering behind the mask, and so he spoke of destiny. He spoke of the dark side as endless. He promised that the boy would return not as a Jedi, but as a weapon, a Sith heir, a new blade. Vader listened, but his silence was no longer hollow. He remembered the fire of the screams of Padma, the words of Obi-Wan half burned into his soul. You were the chosen one. Now that prophecy belonged to another, to his son, Luke, far away. The rebellion grew bold. Whispers of hope moved like embers in the void, and in the shadows of Yavin and Hoth, Luke trained, not just in skill, but in belief. He bore the burden of prophecy unknowingly, his hands trembling as the galaxy's fate was pressed into them. But the Force had not forgotten balanced it stirred, not in Jedi temples, long turned to dust, not in Sith tombs, broken by time, but in the breath between father and son. Vader hunted the boy, But something in him feared finding him, because Luke was to face Anakin, and Anakin, though buried, was not gone. He haunted the throne room. He whispered beneath the mask. He stood between Vader and the power promised by Sidious, and Sidious knew. He smiled as only monsters do. He would pit father against son, and from their ruin he would rise eternal. The throne of ash did not belong to Vader. It belonged to the one who survived the fire. The master waits. The sun rises. The shadow remembers. The end begins to burn. Chapter 16. The world between fathers, between the living and the dying, between Jedi and Sith, a world unseen begins to whisper. Luke stood at the edge of stars, not as a warrior, not yet as a Jedi, but as a question the Force could no longer ignore. He had faced his father on Bespin, and the truth had broken him. Not just the truth of blood, but of destiny. That he, the boy of sand and fire, carried the weight of prophecy. Once thought extinguished, OBI-1 had lied. Yoda had waited, but the Force had chosen it called. To Luke not with clarity, but with echoes. Dreams wrapped in shadow. Visions half true. He saw a tree on Dagobah, inside the mask of Vader. Beneath it his own face. He feared the darkness within, but he feared becoming his father more. Vader, meanwhile, drifted through starfields, like a wraith of steel, every breath drawn through a machine, every step chained to a past he no longer ruled. He watched the boys rise from afar, reporting all to his master. But secretly he wondered, would Luke understand what he had failed to? Would he be strong enough to defy the Emperor, or would he fall as Anakin had? Palpatine watched both with glee, for in their convergence he saw his triumph. He summoned Luke through Wardot, through the trap of Endor, through the illusion of surrender. Luke came not as prey, but as hope cloaked in darkness. He surrendered himself to Vader, not to be killed, but to be seen. Come with me, Luke said. But Vader had walked too long in shadow. He led Luke to the Emperor's throne, to the Death Star, rebuilt in secret, suspended like a god's eye, above the forest moon. There the trap was set. There the Force itself waited to decide. Father, son, master, and something ancient rising between them. A world between fate and freedom. The blade shall rise. The father shall fall, and prophecy shall be tested in fire. Chapter 17. The final rite of the Chosen One in the heart of darkness. The last light must be kindled or forever extinguished. The throne room burned with shadow and fire. Sidious sat, like a god of ruin, weaving lightning like a serpent's kiss. His laughter echoed through steel and bone. Luke stood before him, calm yet trembling. The weight of all he had become pressed heavy upon his shoulders. Vader stood between them, broken tight and bound by chains of past and choice. The Emperor's voice was venom. Strike him down. Fulfill your destiny. Join me and rule the galaxy. Luke's saber ignited, blue and bright. I will never join you. The duel began not just of blades, but of wills. Lightning clashed with steel, hope against despair, father against son, shadow against light. Vader's breath rattled in the chamber as he fought his own darkness. Every strike was a battle within. Every parry a plea for redemption. Sidious's fury grew, but so did Luke's resolve. The Emperor's lightning surged toward Luke. Vader's body moved not as machine, but as man. He caught the bolts, shielded his son, Pain exploded through him. Flesh burned beneath metal, but the chains shattered in that moment. Anakin Skywalker awoke. He cast Sidious into the abyss. The throne room fell silent. Vader fell broken. But free. Luke cradled his father in the last breath. Anakin whispered, "You were right. I was wrong. The Force shifted. Balance trembled. The prophecy was fulfilled not in power, but in sacrifice. The chosen flame was not a sword, but a light to guide the lost." Chapter 18. The whisper of balance in the silence after the storm. The Force speaks in quiet truths. The stars no longer burned with war. A new dawn unfolded across the galaxies. Scars. Luke stood amidst ruins and memories, carrying the weight of what was lost and what was saved. Anakin's spirit walked with him, not as Vader, not as shadow, but as light reclaimed. The Jedi Order was no longer the same. Neither was the Sith. Balance had been paid for in blood and sorrow. Whispers spoke of new beginnings, of hope buried deep within. The Force, once fractured, began to hum quietly, patiently, as if waiting for those who would listen, for those who would learn, for those who would remember. The war was over, but the story, the myth, was eternal in the cosmic dance of light and shadow. The whisper endures, and so does the prophecy. From the ashes of despair, the Force breathes anew. The chosen one walks among the stars, forever a whisper in the void.